The sky above Valori Prime burned orange and red. Fire fell from the heavens like rain. Buildings that had stood for 1,000 years crumbled into dust. The Valori people ran through the streets, their crystalline bodies reflecting the flames around them. Children cried. Parents screamed. The old and the sick were left behind. Ambassador Thesa stood at the window of the emergency bunker deep beneath the capital city. She watched the destruction through security cameras. Her heart broke with every explosion, with every life lost. The Drakari Empire had come to her world, and they had come to destroy everything. The Drakari were conquerors. They had swept across the galaxy for centuries, taking world after world. They did not negotiate. They did not make deals. They simply arrived with their massive warships, burned everything to ash, and claimed the ruins as their own. Now it was the Valori's turn to suffer. Thesa turned away from the screens. Her assistant, a young Valori named Pel, looked at her with fear in his eyes. The Galactic Council, Pel said. Have they responded? Thesa's jaw tightened. She had sent the distress signal 3 days ago. 3 days of waiting while her people died. 3 days of hoping that someone, anyone, would come to help them. They sent a message, Thesa said. Her voice was bitter. They will dispatch a diplomatic envoy, Peacekeepers. They will arrive in 6 rotations. Pel's face went pale. 6 rotations? But we will all be dead by then. Yes, Thesa said. We will. The Galactic Council was supposed to protect civilizations like the Valori. That was their purpose. They had rules and procedures and committees that discussed everything for months before taking action. By the time they finished talking, the Drakari would have turned Valori Prime into a graveyard. Thesa walked to the communication console. Her fingers moved over the controls. She had one more option. It was dangerous. It was against protocol. The Council had forbidden contact with them. But Thesa did not care about rules anymore. She cared about saving her people. What are you doing? Pel asked. I am redirecting our distress beacon, Thesa said. To the Outer Rim. Pel's eyes went wide. The Outer Rim? But the only species there is... humans, Thesa finished. Yes, I know. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. The Council watched them carefully, studied them, debated about them in endless meetings. Some Council members said humans were dangerous. Others said they were primitive. Most agreed that they should be kept at a distance until they matured as a species. Thesa had read the reports about humans. She had seen the footage of their history. They were violent, yes. They had fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. But she had also seen something else in those reports. Something the Council overlooked. Humans helped each other. When disaster struck one of their nations, others sent aid. When the weak were threatened, the strong stepped forward. They did not wait for committees or procedures. They acted. Thesa pressed the button. The distress beacon shot through space, carrying images of burning cities, fleeing civilians, dying children. It carried a simple message in every language the Valori knew, including the human tongue called English. Please, the message said, help us. 12,000 light-years away, on a planet called Earth, the signal arrived. Admiral Taiho Park sat in his office at United Earth Fleet Command in the city of Bizon. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face marked by decades of service. He had fought in the Solar Consolidation Wars 20 years ago, when humanity's scattered colonies finally united under one government. He had seen death. He had caused death. He had hoped that humanity's expansion into the galaxy would bring peace. His communication officer, Lieutenant Jiwan Lee, burst through his door without knocking. Admiral, Jiwan said, You need to see this. Taiho followed her to the command center. Dozens of officers stared at the main screen, their faces pale. On the screen, a city burned. Alien beings, beautiful creatures made of living crystal, ran from explosions. Children fell. Parents wept. And in the sky above, massive warships continued their bombardment. The signal came from Valori space, G1 said. They're under attack by something called the Drakari Empire. They're asking for help. Taiho watched the footage in silence. He saw a mother shield her child with her own body as a building collapsed on them. He saw an old man help a wounded stranger, only to be cut down by weapons fire. He saw courage. He saw fear. He saw people just like his own. What about the Galactic Council? Taiho asked. They're sending peacekeepers, G1 said. In 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Taiho repeated. These people don't have 6 hours. He turned to face his officers. Every eye in the room was on him. They were young, most of them. They had trained for exploration, for first contact, for building bridges with alien civilizations. They had not trained for this. But Taiho had. These people sent a call for help, Taiho said. They didn't ask for politicians. They didn't ask for diplomats. They asked for someone to save them. He paused. The Galactic Council might be content to let them die. I am not. A murmur ran through the room. Some officers looked uncertain. Others looked determined. Sir, one officer said, the Council has forbidden human military action in Allied space. If we intervene, then we will deal with the consequences, Taiho said. I would rather face a council hearing than live knowing I did nothing while innocents died. He walked to the main console and activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships of the 1st Expeditionary Fleet, this is Admiral Park. I am ordering an immediate departure for Valori space. We have received a distress signal from a civilian population under attack. Our mission is simple. Stop the attack and protect the innocent. Prepare for combat. We launch in 72 hours. The channel went silent for a moment. Then voices began to respond. This is the cruiser Dauntless. We're with you, Admiral. Destroyer hammer standing by. Battleship Indomitable ready for deployment. One by one, every ship in the fleet responded. Not a single captain refused. Not a single crew hesitated. Commander Yuna Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, the fleet's flagship. She was 41 years old, with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had served under Taiho for 15 years, and she had never seen him like this. There was fire in his voice, purpose in his words. Commander, her navigation officer said, course is set for Valori space. 12,000 light years. At maximum speed, we'll arrive in 8 days. Yuna nodded. 8 days. A lot can happen in 8 days. A lot of people could die. Then let's make sure we arrive ready to fight, she said. The 1st Expeditionary Fleet consisted of 12 battleships, 40 cruisers, and 200 support vessels. It was the largest military force humanity had ever sent beyond their own solar system. It was also completely untested against alien opposition. They had no idea what they were flying into. They had no allies waiting for them. They had only a desperate message and their own conscience. As the fleet gathered in orbit around Earth, Taiho stood at the window of his quarters and looked down at his homeworld. Blue oceans, green continents, clouds drifting across the surface. His granddaughter lived down there in a small house near the sea. She was 7 years old. She liked to collect seashells and ask him questions about the stars. Somewhere across the galaxy, a Valori child was hiding in a bunker, listening to explosions, wondering if she would live to see tomorrow. Taiho clenched his fist. We're coming, he whispered. Hold on. We're coming. The fleet engaged their drives. One by one, the ships disappeared into the light of hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. They were heading toward the unknown, toward danger, toward a war that was not their own. But Taiho knew something that the Galactic Council did not understand, something that the Drakari Empire would soon learn. When humans heard a cry for help, they answered, no matter the cost. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valori system. For a moment, there was only silence. The stars hung in the darkness like scattered diamonds. The distant sun of Valori Prime glowed soft and golden. It could have been peaceful. Then the sensors came alive with warnings. Commander Yuna Kim gripped the armrest of her captain's chair as red lights flashed across the bridge of the Indomitable. Lieutenant Jiwon Lee worked frantically at her console, her fingers flying over the controls. Contact, Jiwon said. Multiple contacts. 47 enemy warships in a defensive formation around Valori Prime. They've established a blockade. Yuna looked at the tactical display. The Drakari ships were massive. Each one was easily twice the size of the largest human battleship. Their hulls were dark and covered with weapons. They looked like predators waiting for prey. They've seen us, Jiwon continued. They're hailing. Put it through, Yuna said. The main screen flickered. A face appeared. It was reptilian, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like burning coals. The creature wore armor decorated with bones and trophies from conquered worlds. This was Overlord Veth, commander of the Drakari blockade fleet. Unidentified vessels, Veth said. His voice was deep and cold. You have entered restricted space. Withdraw immediately, or you will be destroyed. Yuna did not respond. She was not the one who needed to speak. Admiral Taiho's voice came through the fleet communication channel. He spoke calmly, without fear. This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet. We received a distress signal from the people of Valori Prime. We are here to answer that call. Veth laughed. It was an ugly sound, like rocks grinding together. The Galactic Council said they would send peacekeepers, Veth said. Diplomats with empty ships and empty words. Instead, they send you? Whatever you are making a terrible mistake. We are not from the Council, Taiho said. We are from Earth, and we did not come here to talk. Veth's laughter died. His eyes narrowed. Then, what did you come for, little creature? To tell you that you have 10 minutes to release the orbital bombardment locks on those civilian centers. 10 minutes to stop attacking innocent people. If you do not comply, we will remove you from this system. Permanently. Silence filled the communication channel. On the Drakari bridge, officers looked at each other with confusion. No one had ever spoken to Overlord Veth like this. No one had ever dared. Then Veth smiled. His teeth were sharp and yellow. You amuse me, Earth creature. Your ships are small. Your weapons are primitive. My empire has conquered 100 worlds. Your species has never faced real war. He leaned forward. You have made a long journey to die. The channel went dead. Yuna turned to her crew. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Alarms rang throughout the ship. Crew members ran to their posts. Weapons systems powered up. Shield generators hummed with energy. On every ship in the human fleet, the same scene repeated. Soldiers prepared for a fight that might be their last. In the hangar bay of the Indomitable, pilot Minho Beak climbed into his fighter. He was 28 years old, with quick reflexes and a reckless smile. He had joined the fleet to see the stars. Now he was about to fight for them. Hey, Minho, his wingman called from the next fighter. You scared? Minho checked his weapon systems. Everything was green. Terrified, he said. But those people down there are more scared than I am. So let's go give the Drakari something to be scared about. The Drakari fleet moved first. They expected the humans to flee. That was what other species did when they saw the might of the Empire. They ran. They surrendered. They begged for mercy. The humans did not run. Enemy weapons firing, G1 reported. Plasma cannons. Heavy yield. The first volley lit up the darkness of space. Green fire streaked toward the human fleet like a storm of death. The Drakari officers smiled. One volley would be enough to shatter these newcomers. But something strange happened. The human ships did not scatter. They held their formation. They turned their forward shields toward the incoming fire and braced for impact. The plasma struck, and the shields flared bright blue, absorbing the energy. The human shields held. On the Drakari flagship, Veth frowned. Impossible. Those shields should have collapsed. His tactical officer checked the readings. Their shield technology. It's different from anything we've seen. It's designed to absorb energy, not deflect it. Then we will simply use more energy, Veth growled. All ships, concentrate fire on the lead vessel. The Drakari fleet fired again. This time, every ship aimed at the Indomitable. Hundreds of plasma bolts converged on Commander Yuna's ship. Shields at 60%, an officer shouted. 50%. 40. Hold the line, Yuna said. Her voice was steady. We just need a few more seconds. Deep in the Indomitable's hull, massive railguns powered up. These were humanity's answer to alien energy weapons. Instead of plasma or lasers, railguns fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The technology was simple. The results were devastating. Main guns charged, G1 reported. All ships, Yuna said. Fire. The human fleet fired as one. The railgun projectiles crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds. They struck the Drakari ships with the force of small meteors. The first Drakari cruiser's shields flickered, then failed. The projectiles punched through the hull like needles through paper. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. Then another ship exploded. Then another. Veth watched in disbelief as his fleet took damage. Real damage. In 100 years of conquest, no enemy had hurt the Drakari like this. Return fire, he screamed. Destroy them all. The battle became chaos. Plasma bolts and railgun rounds filled the space between the fleets. Ships died on both sides. The Drakari had numbers. The humans had speed and precision. Human fighters, small and quick, darted between the larger ships, targeting weapon systems and engines. Minho flew through the storm of fire like a man possessed. His fighter twisted and turned, dodging plasma bolts by inches. He lined up his target, a Drakari weapons battery, and squeezed the trigger. His missile struck true. The battery exploded. That's 3, he said to himself. Come on, give me more. On the Indomitable, warning lights flashed. The ship shuddered from multiple impacts. Shields failing on the port side, an officer reported. Hull breach on deck 7. Seal it, Yuna ordered. Redirect power from non-essential systems. Keep firing. She looked at the tactical display. The Drakari had lost 8 ships. The humans had lost 3. But the enemy still had the numbers. If this became a battle of endurance, the humans would lose. Then she saw it. The Drakari formation was weakening on the left flank. They were pulling ships toward the center to replace their losses. It was a small gap, but it was there. Admiral, Yuna said into her communication device. I see an opening. Left flank. If we push through there, we can reach Valori Prime. Taiho's voice came back. I see it too. All cruisers form up on the Indomitable. We're going through. 12 human cruisers broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward the gap. The Drakari tried to close the hole, but they were too slow. The human ships punched through the blockade line, leaving a trail of burning enemy vessels behind them. Veth slammed his fist against his command console. Stop them. But it was too late. The human cruisers emerged on the other side of the blockade, between the Drakari fleet and Valori Prime. They turned their weapons toward the remaining enemy ships. Overlord Veth. Taiho's voice echoed across all channels. Your blockade is broken. Your ships are dying. You can continue this fight and lose everything, or you can withdraw now. Choose. For a long moment, Veth said nothing. His remaining ships were scattered. His formation was destroyed. The humans had done in 47 minutes what no species had done in a century. They had beaten the Drakari. This is not over, Veth hissed. The Empire will return. And when we do, we will burn your precious Earth to ashes. The Drakari fleet turned and fled into hyperspace. On the surface of Valori Prime, Ambassador Thesa watched the battle feeds with tears streaming down her crystalline face. The burning sky was clearing. The bombardment had stopped. And through the clouds, she could see human ships descending, not to conquer, but to help. The first human vessel to land was a medical transport. Soldiers in gray uniforms emerged carrying supplies. They began treating the wounded. They helped pull survivors from the rubble. A human doctor, a woman named Yunji Han, knelt beside a dying Valori child and worked desperately to save her life. Thesa walked toward the landing site. The humans stopped and looked at her. They did not know what to say. They had never seen a Valori before. She bowed deeply. We asked for peacekeepers, she said. You sent warriors who chose peace. Thank you. Thank you for answering our call. Admiral Taiho stepped forward. His face was tired, but his eyes were kind. Your people needed help, he said simply. We were able to give it. That's all. But Thesa knew it was more than that. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council debated and waited. Across the galaxy, civilizations looked away from suffering because it was not their problem. The humans had looked to warn it, and they had come. News of the Drakari defeat spread across the galaxy like fire. No one could believe it. The mighty Drakari Empire, conquerors of 100 worlds, had been beaten by newcomers. By humans. Species that had never heard of Earth now whispered the name with a mixture of wonder and fear. The Drakari Emperor sat on his throne of black stone and listened to Overlord Veth's report. The throne room was vast, filled with shadows and the smell of blood. The Emperor was ancient, his scales cracked with age, his eyes filled with cold fury. You fled, the Emperor said. His voice was soft, which made it more terrifying. You had 47 warships, and you fled from creatures who have barely left their birth planet. Veth knelt on the cold floor. He did not dare to look up. Great Emperor, their weapons were unlike anything we expected. Their shields, silence. The Emperor raised one clawed hand. I do not want excuses. I want victory. Prepare the Third Armada. 500 warships. You will return to Valori space, and you will erase every trace of these humans. Then you will find their homeworld and burn it to dust. Veth trembled. 500 ships? But that is nearly a quarter of our military force. Then the universe will learn what happens to those who defy the Drakari Empire. The Emperor smiled, showing teeth worn sharp by centuries of war. Go. Do not return until Earth is a memory. On Valori Prime, the humans worked without rest. They rebuilt hospitals. They delivered food and water to refugee camps. They treated the wounded and buried the dead. For the Valori, it was strange to see warriors lay down their weapons and pick up tools. Strange, but beautiful. Admiral Taiho stood in the command center of the Indomitable, studying reports from his scouts. His face was grim. "How many ships?" Commander Yuna asked. 500, Taiho said. "Maybe more." The Third Armada, the largest Drakari battle force in 2 centuries. Yuna's stomach tightened. They had barely survived the blockade with 47 enemy ships. 500 was impossible. "We should call for reinforcements," she said. "I already have. The second and third fleets are on their way, but they won't arrive for 3 weeks. Taiho turned away from the display. "The Drakari will be here in 2. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. They would have to fight alone, outnumbered more than 10 to 1. They would have to survive long enough for help to arrive. "Then we fight smart," Yuna said. "We make them bleed for every inch of space." Taiho nodded slowly. "Gather the senior officers. We need a plan." The meeting lasted 6 hours. Officers argued. Plans were made and discarded. Finally, Major Suho Kang stood up. He was the commander of the human Marines, a man with arms like tree trunks and a mind as sharp as any strategist. "We're thinking about this wrong," Suho said. "We keep trying to imagine a fleet battle. We won't win a fleet battle. But the Drakari have occupied moons and stations throughout this system. They have supply lines. They have weak points." He pointed at the map. "We don't fight their strength. We fight their weakness." Taiho leaned forward. "Go on." We split our forces. Small teams. Fast ships. We hit their supply convoys. We sabotage their fuel depots. We support resistance fighters on the occupied moons. We make this system into a nightmare for them." Suho smiled grimly. "Humans invented this kind of war. We've been doing it for thousands of years. We call it asymmetric warfare." Lieutenant Jiwan raised her hand. "But eventually, they'll corner us. They have too many ships. Then, we make sure that when they finally corner us, we've hurt them badly enough that the fight is fair." Suho looked around the room. "We're not trying to defeat the Third Armada by ourselves. We're trying to survive until reinforcements arrive. Every day we buy is a victory." Taiho stood. His decision was made. "Do it," he said. "Major Kang, you'll coordinate ground operations. Commander Kim, you'll lead the fleet harassment. We hit them everywhere at once. We never let them rest. We make them fear every shadow in this system." The human fleet scattered like seeds in the wind. Small squadrons hid in asteroid fields. Marines landed on occupied moons. Engineers turned abandoned mining stations into weapon platforms. The Valori, who had been cowering in bunkers, emerged to fight alongside their human allies. On the 3rd moon of Valori, Suho led his Marines through the ruins of a Drakari garrison. The aliens had killed thousands of Valori here. They had built their camp on top of mass graves. Now the camp was burning. "Area clear," Suho's sergeant reported. 42 enemy killed. No survivors. Suho looked at the flames. He felt no joy in this. Only necessity. "Strip their communications equipment," he ordered. "Plant the explosives. We move out in 15 minutes. A Valori resistance fighter approached him. Her name was Enna, and half her face was scarred from a Drakari whip. She had lost her entire family in the occupation. "Why do you help us?" she asked. "Your people have nothing to gain here. You could have stayed safe on your world." Suho thought about the question. He thought about his home in the mountains of Korea, where his mother still made kimchi every autumn. He thought about his daughter, who was learning to walk. "Because if we don't help you," he said, "who will? And if no one helps anyone, what kind of galaxy do we live in?" Anna stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Humans are strange," she said. "But I'm glad you are here." In space, Pilot Minho led his squadron through a field of frozen asteroids. They were hunting. Ahead of them, a Drakari supply convoy was making its way toward the Third Armada's gathering point. 12 transports, Minho reported. 4 escort ships. Heavy armor. His wingman whistled. Those transports are carrying enough fuel to power 50 warships for a month. Then let's make sure they never deliver it. Minho pushed his throttle forward. Attack formation. Hit the escorts first, then the transports. Don't let any of them escape. The human fighters burst from the asteroid field like hornets from a nest. The Drakari escorts never saw them coming. Minho's missiles struck the first escort before it could raise shields. The ship cracked open like an egg. The other escorts tried to form a defensive line, but the human fighters were too fast. They darted between plasma bolts, striking from angles the Drakari could not cover. One by one, the escorts died. Then it was the transport's turn. They're trying to run, Minho's wingman said. Not fast enough. Minho lined up his shot. All fighters, weapons free. Explosions filled the darkness. When it was over, 12 Drakari transports were nothing but debris. That's their fuel supply gone, Minho said with satisfaction. The Third Armada is going to be very thirsty. Back on Valori Prime, engineer Harry Cho worked around the clock. She was small, with calloused hands and tired eyes. She had spent 20 years building things. Now she was learning to destroy them. The mining station is ready, she reported to Commander Yuna. I've rigged the reactors to overload on command. When the Drakari fleet passes through this sector, we can detonate remotely. It won't destroy many ships, but it will damage their sensors. Yuna studied the map. Good. That's exactly where we want them blind. For 2 weeks, the humans fought in the shadows. They never faced the Drakari in open battle. They struck convoys. They destroyed fuel depots. They rescued prisoners. They armed resistance fighters. Slowly, steadily, they weakened the Third Armada. Overlord Veth raged aboard his flagship. Half his supplies were gone. A quarter of his escort ships had been destroyed. And he had not even reached Valori Prime. Find them, he screamed at his officers. Find these humans and destroy them. But every time the Drakari sent ships to hunt the humans, those ships never returned. The humans were ghosts. They were nightmares. They were everywhere and nowhere. Finally, on the 14th day, the Third Armada reached Valori's second moon. The human fleet was waiting. Veth smiled when he saw them. At last. They have nowhere left to run. He was wrong. As the Drakari fleet prepared to engage, sensors detected new contacts. Many new contacts. Emerging from hyperspace behind the Drakari formation. The second and third human fleets had arrived. 50 more battleships. 200 cruisers. Over 1,000 fighters. Admiral Taiho's voice echoed across all channels. Overlord Veth, you expected peacekeepers. You expected diplomats. You expected weakness. His voice was calm, almost gentle. You expected wrong. And now your fleet is trapped between two forces, with half your supplies destroyed and your escorts scattered. On the Indomitable, Commander Yuna smiled for the first time in weeks. You fight like cornered animals, Veth snarled over the communication channel. No, Yuna replied. We fight like humans. There's a difference. The Battle of Valori's shadow began. It lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Drakari Third Armada was no more. The news spread across 1,000 worlds in a matter of days. The Drakari Third Armada, 500 warships strong, had been destroyed. Not by the mighty Galactic Council. Not by an alliance of ancient powers. By humans. By a species that most civilizations had never heard of. In the great halls of the Council Station, diplomats and ambassadors gathered to discuss this new development. The station was enormous, built at the center of the galaxy where all major trade routes intersected. Thousands of species came here to debate, negotiate, and scheme. For centuries, the Council had maintained peace through endless discussion. Now, that peace was shattered. Ambassador Thesis stood before the Council, her crystalline body glowing with pride and gratitude. Behind her, a holographic display showed images of Valori Prime. The burned cities were being rebuilt. The refugees were returning home. Human soldiers walked alongside Valori citizens, helping to carry supplies and clear rubble. The humans came when we called, Thesis said. They fought for us. They bled for us. They asked for nothing in return. Where was the Council? Where were you when my people were dying? The Council chamber erupted in noise. Diplomats shouted over each other. Some defended the Council's delay. Others demanded to know more about these humans. A few simply watched in silence, calculating. High Chancellor Zeth, the ancient leader of the Council, raised his hand for quiet. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Ambassador Thesa, Zeth said, the Council understands your gratitude toward these humans. However, we must also consider the implications. A new military power has emerged in the galaxy. A power that does not follow Council protocols. A power that uses violence as its first response. Thesa's eyes narrowed. Violence? The Drakari were bombarding my cities. They were killing children. What should the humans have done? Send a strongly worded letter? Laughter rippled through some sections of the chamber. Others looked offended. The Council has procedures for these situations, Zeth continued. Diplomatic channels. Peacekeeping forces. The humans bypassed all of this. They acted unilaterally. If we allow such behavior, what prevents any species from waging war whenever they choose? Perhaps, Thesis said coldly, if your procedures had worked, we would not have needed the humans at all. The debate continued for hours. Some species praised the humans. Others feared them. The Tarani, a proud warrior race, expressed admiration for human combat tactics. The Keth, peaceful healers, worried about the escalation of violence. The various trade guilds calculated the economic implications of a new military power. Finally, High Chancellor Zeth delivered the Council's official response. The Galactic Council hereby demands that the human species submit to oversight. Human military vessels must remain within human territory. Human weapons technology must be shared with the Council for evaluation. Failure to comply will result in trade sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Thesa laughed out loud. The sound echoed through the chamber. You think they will comply? You think the species that cross the galaxy to save strangers will bow to your demands? She shook her head. I look forward to their response. Admiral Taiho arrived at Council Station 1 week later. He came alone, without bodyguards, without warships. He wore a simple gray uniform without medals or decorations. He walked into the Council chamber like a man walking into his own home. 1,000 eyes watched him. 1,000 minds judged him. This was the human who had destroyed the Drakari Third Armada. This was the man who had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. High Chancellor Zeth spoke first. Admiral Park, the Council has made its demands clear. Will your species comply? Taiho stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by aliens of every shape and size. He looked at each section of the gallery, taking his time, letting them see his face. Then he began to speak. I understand that the Council is concerned about human military power. I understand that change is frightening. For centuries, you have maintained peace through negotiation, through bureaucracy, through patience. These are valuable things. They have prevented many wars. He paused. But they did not prevent the Drakari from conquering 100 worlds. They did not prevent the genocide of the Valori. While you debated procedures, innocent people died. His voice hardened. So let me tell you why we came. Let me tell you who we are. He placed a data chip on the podium. The holographic display activated, showing footage from Valori Prime, human soldiers pulling survivors from rubble, human doctors treating alien wounded, human engineers rebuilding destroyed infrastructure. We did not cross the galaxy to conquer. We did not come for territory or resources or power. We came because someone needed help, and we had the power to give it. That's not a crime. That's a responsibility. The chamber was silent. You demand that we disarm. You demand that we stay in our corner of the galaxy and be quiet. You sat in comfort while the Valori burned. You debated procedures while children died. Tayo's voice rose. And now you demand that we disarm? He let the question hang in the air. No, we will not disarm. We will not hide. And when the next distress call comes, because there will be a next time, we will answer it. Because that is what humans do. That is who we choose to be. He turned and walked out of the chamber without waiting for a response. On Valori Prime, the work of rebuilding continued. Dr. Yoonji Han had set up a medical station in the capital city. She worked 18-hour days, treating the injured, training Valori healers, adapting human medicine for alien biology. One evening, a Valori elder came to see her. His name was Pell, and he had been Ambassador These's assistant. Half his body had been burned in the bombardment. "You saved my life," he said. "I should have died in the fire. But one of your soldiers carried me out." Yoonji smiled gently. "That's what we do. We look after each other. But we are not each other," Pal said. "We are different species. Different worlds. We had never met your kind before the war. Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" It was a question Yoonji had heard many times. She thought about her answer carefully. On Earth, we have a word. Empathy. It means feeling what others feel. When we saw your cities burning, we felt your pain as if it were our own. We couldn't ignore it. We couldn't look away. She touched his shoulder gently. Maybe the galaxy thinks that's strange. Maybe it is. But it's also who we are. Pal was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. "The Valori have a word too," he said. Cathvara. It means those who come when called. We will remember you. Always. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the galaxy, the Drakari Emperor plotted his revenge. He had lost a third armada, but the empire was vast. He still had thousands of ships. He still had centuries of experience in conquest. These humans had won a battle. They had not won the war. "Begin construction of the Grand Fleet," he ordered. "Every shipyard in the Empire. Every resource we have. These humans think they are saviors. I will show them what happens to those who defy the Drakari." His advisors exchanged nervous glances. "Great Emperor," one said carefully, "the humans have allies now. Other species are beginning to support them. Even some council members. Then we will destroy them all." The Emperor's eyes burned with hatred. Every species that stands with the humans will share their fate. The galaxy will learn that defiance leads only to death. He stood from his throne and walked to the window of his palace. Outside, the stars glittered cold and distant. "I have ruled through fear for centuries. These humans think they can inspire hope instead. Hope is weakness. Fear is power." He clenched his clawed fist. "I will teach them this lesson, and the galaxy will watch them burn." On Valori Prime, Sergeant Do-Yoon Shin taught a group of young Valori how to maintain human weapons. Lieutenant Mireille Song helped organize the evacuation of refugees from the outer settlements. Major Suho Kang worked with Valori Defense Forces to fortify the remaining cities. They knew the war was not over. They knew the Drakari would return. But for now, they had won. For now, the Valori were safe. And across the galaxy, other species began to whisper. They whispered about humans, about hope, about the idea that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. The Galactic Council had ruled through bureaucracy and inaction. The Drakari had ruled through fear and violence. Perhaps there was another way. Perhaps the humans had shown them. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Valori Shadow. The Valori had rebuilt much of their world. The human fleet had grown stronger, reinforced by ships from Earth. But everyone knew the peace would not last. The Drakari Empire had been quiet for too long. When the Grand Fleet finally launched, it darkened the stars. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the sensor display with cold dread. Over 2,000 warships. Carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers. The largest military force the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. And at the center of the formation, the Emperor's flagship, the Dominion of Ash, a ship so massive it could be seen with the naked eye from orbit. The Drakari have activated their full military, Lieutenant G1 reported. Her voice shook slightly. All reserves, all regional fleets. They're coming with everything they have. Commander Yuna stepped up beside Taiho. Her face was pale but determined. Can we stop them? She asked quietly. Taiho was silent for a long moment. The numbers did not lie. Even with reinforcements from Earth, even with their Valori allies, the human fleet was outnumbered 3-1. The Drakari had learned from their previous defeat. They would not make the same mistakes again. I don't know, Taiho admitted. But we're going to try. He turned to face his officers. They were tired. They were scared. They had been fighting for months, and now they faced the greatest battle of their lives. Listen to me, he said. 6 months ago, we answered a call for help. We could have stayed home. We could have been safe. We chose to come anyway. His voice hardened. We didn't come all this way to quit. We didn't sacrifice everything just to run when it gets hard. The Valori are depending on us. The galaxy is watching us. And we will not let them down. Across the fleet, his words echoed through every speaker on every ship. Soldiers gripped their weapons tighter. Pilots climbed into their fighters. Engineers checked their systems one last time, thought they were afraid. But they were ready. The human fleet formed a defensive line around Valori Prime. Behind them, civilian transports evacuated those who could not fight. Ahead of them, the Drakari Grand Fleet approached like a wave of darkness. The Emperor himself broadcasted a message to the entire system. Humans of Earth, you have interfered in matters beyond your understanding. You have defied an empire that has ruled the stars since before your species learned to walk upright. This ends now. His voice was cold, ancient, terrible. Surrender, and I may spare your homeworld. Fight, and I will erase your species from existence. Every man, woman, and child. Every city. Every memory. It will be as if you never existed. Admiral Taiho's response was simple. No. The battle began. The first wave of Drakari fighters swept toward the human lines like a swarm of insects. Human point defense systems opened fire, filling space with tracer rounds and missile contrails. Minho Beak led his squadron into the chaos, weaving between enemy ships, firing at anything with Drakari markings. "Watch your six!" he shouted to his wingman. Fighters coming in from above. The dogfight was brutal. Human pilots were outnumbered 5-1. For every Drakari fighter they destroyed, 2 more took its place. But they held the line. They bought time for the fleet to engage the enemy capitals. The Indomitable traded fire with 3 Drakari cruisers simultaneously. Its shields flared blue under the onslaught. Damage reports flooded the bridge. Port shields failing, an officer reported. Hull breach on deck 12. Seal it, Yuna ordered. Keep firing. We can't let them through. Captain Jisoo Wang commanded the cruiser Resolve on the left flank. Her ship had taken heavy damage. Engines were failing. Half her weapons were offline. But she saw a Drakari carrier preparing to launch boarding pods toward a civilian transport. She didn't hesitate. All hands brace for impact, she announced. Helm, ramming speed. The Resolve accelerated toward the carrier. Its remaining weapons fired continuously. The Drakari tried to evade, but the human cruiser was already too close. The collision was catastrophic. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Valori Prime's surface. Captain Jisoo Wang died, saving 3,000 civilian lives. She was the first of many. In the engine room of the Indomitable. Engineer Harry Cho worked frantically to keep power flowing to the shields. A plasma conduit had ruptured, spraying superheated gas into the corridor. The automated repair systems were overwhelmed. Everyone evacuate, Harry ordered her team. I'll seal the breach manually. Chief, if you stay in there, you'll... I know. Harry grabbed her welding kit. Get out. That's an order. She sealed herself inside the burning corridor and began welding the breach closed. The heat was unbearable. Her suit was melting, but she kept working until the breach was sealed and the shields stabilized. She did not survive, but the Indomitable did. Hour after hour, the battle raged. Human ships fell. Drakari ships fell. The space around Valori Prime became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. Admiral Taiho watched his fleet shrink, ship by ship, life by life. But something unexpected was happening. Other species were arriving. The Keth, ancient pacifists who had never fought a war in their history, appeared with medical ships. They flew into the battlefield, dodging weapons fire, rescuing wounded from both sides. They had come to heal. The Durrani, proud warriors who had mocked humanity's recklessness, arrived with battle cruisers. Their admiral broadcasted a simple message. Any species who fights like this deserves allies. Even some council species came. Ships from worlds that had debated and delayed and hesitated. They saw the humans dying for strangers, and they were ashamed. They came to make amends. The tide began to turn. The Drakari formation faltered as unexpected attacks struck their flanks. The Emperor watched in fury as his grand fleet began to crumble. He had expected the galaxy to cower. He had expected the humans to stand alone. He had expected wrong. Break through to Valori Prime, he commanded. I will burn that world myself. The Dominion of Ash surged forward, its massive engines flaring. Escorts fell around it, sacrificing themselves to clear a path. The flagship was heading straight for the planet. Admiral, Jiwan said, the Emperor's ship is breaking through. Our main fleet is too engaged to intercept. Taiho looked at the tactical display. She was right. The Dominion of Ash would reach Valori Prime. A single ship that large could devastate the planet's surface in hours, unless someone stopped it. Minho, Taiho said into his communication device. I have a mission for you. A dangerous one. Minho's voice crackled back. What else is new, Admiral? The Emperor's flagship. We need to stop it. I need your squadron to breach its defenses. Find a weakness. Any weakness. There was a pause. Minho knew what this meant. The Dominion of Ash had more point defense weapons than some planets. Flying toward it was suicide. On my way, Minho said. His squadron, what was left of it, formed up behind him. 15 fighters against the most powerful warship in the galaxy. The odds were impossible. They flew anyway. The approach was hell. Plasma bolts filled the space around the Dominion of Ash like rain. Minho lost 3 pilots in the first 10 seconds. Then 2 more. Then 4. But they kept pressing forward. There! Minho spotted a gap in the point defense grid. A single cooling vent, left unprotected while the ship focused its weapons on larger threats. All fighters follow me! The remaining 8 fighters dove toward the vent. Minho fired his last missiles into the opening. The explosions tore through the cooling system, causing a chain reaction that spread to the reactor core. The Dominion of Ash began to tear itself apart from within. On the bridge of the flagship, the Emperor felt his ship shudder. Alarms screamed. Officers panicked. Fire spread through the corridors. Impossible, he whispered. This is impossible. The explosion was visible from Valori Prime's surface. A massive ball of fire that lit up the sky like a second sun. The Drakari flagship and the Emperor himself were gone. When the light faded, the Drakari fleet was in chaos. Without their Emperor, without their flagship, their will to fight crumbled. Ships began to surrender. Others fled into hyperspace. The battle was over. The humans had won. But the cost was terrible. Half the human fleet was destroyed. Thousands of soldiers were dead. The space around Valori Prime was choked with wreckage and bodies. On the Indomitable, Admiral Taiho sat in his command chair, staring at the lists of casualties. Harry Cho, Jisuhang, Minho Beek, so many others. Names that would be remembered. Lives that would be mourned. Commander Yuna placed a hand on his shoulder. We did it, she said softly. We saved them. Taiho nodded slowly. Yes, we did. On the surface of Valori Prime, Ambassador Thesa watched the sunrise. The first sunrise since the war began. The sky was clear. The burning was over under. Valori citizens emerged from shelters. They looked up at the sky, at the debris still falling like strange rain, and they wept. They wept for joy. They wept for sorrow. They wept for the strangers who had crossed the stars to save Thema a year later. A memorial was built in the center of the capital city. A statue of a human soldier, hand extended to help a Valori child. Around it, the names of every being who had died in the liberation. Humans, Valori, Tirani, Keth, and others. Admiral Taiho visited every year. He read the names. All of them. A reporter asked him once why humanity had answered a stranger's call. Why they had crossed the galaxy to fight a war that was not their own. Why they had paid such a terrible price.